Hello, everybody. Welcome to What the Frick Live, the show that dives into the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained. I'm your host, Emily. I got Will Martinez with me, too. Together, we are going to... Sorry, I got to turn my phone down. We're going to explore everything from hidden histories to chilling conspiracies tonight. And we got a fascinating show lined up for you today. But before we go into the show and introduce our guests to come on, I want to say hello, Will Martinez at Dark Fringe Radio.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
Good. We've kind of been in a little bit of hiatus the last few weeks, but glad to be back in the saddle here.
Well, I want to say this. You posted something on social media. I'm glad you did. You're a superstar. In my heart, always. Always. That you were featured. We got to brag about you because I'm very proud of you. And I read the article. It's very great. And the comments you said about COVID was very inspirational too. And a lot of good came out of COVID as well. Not the bad, the ugly, or however you want to say it. But I love the part of this. But tell everybody a little bit about this article that came out.
So, yeah, there's a company locally here in Miami called Voyage MIA. What they do is they feature basically local talent, hidden gems, as they call it, on their website. And they reached out to me about the podcast and wanted to do a quick little interview with me and decided to go ahead and do it. Didn't think much of it until it actually came out. It came out really well. They did a really good job. Very professional people, by the way. And, it's a good thing what they're doing. They're basically highlighting people that are out there, locally in the South Florida region, that most people don't maybe have no idea about. So I was, honored and lucky enough to have the opportunity to, have my interview be put up there and be featured. And it's kind of weird because I don't like talking about myself.
I know you don't. That's why I'm putting you on the spot.
I don't even celebrate my own birthday. That's how I hate how much attention. I don't like it. So, but I had to put it out there because I was just like, and I actually waited a week later. Actually posted. It actually came out a week before. So
it came out on Halloween.
Yeah, it did, which was the crazy thing. Right. Yeah. And I waited because I'm just like that. But thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm proud of you. You're really great at what you do. And you've been a part of What the Frick Live for a very long time. Anything like that happens, you need to let me know. Because if you don't talk about yourself, I'm going to make you. Talk about yourself. You work hard. And real quick, over at Dark Fringe Radio, I saw you advertise a show. But I actually have 2 shows, and it's coming up this week. I'm going to be listening to both of them because I'm a little bit behind. But I have a Discussing Diddy. And also have one talk about the Voice of God weapons, but you just have another show that came out. Tell people a little bit about that and where they can listen to your shows.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go directly to our website, darkfridgeradio.com. That's where you can find all the shows, over 155 episodes now. But our latest episode was with a paranormal investigator and also, medium. Her name is Angie Cushel. She's actually a part of a paranormal group here locally called War Party Paranormal. I'm sure you've heard of them. Yeah, and so she's a part of that group, and they're local here. They're a part of the Yesteryear Village here in South Florida, which has the infamous, what's the name of the house? It'll come to me here in a minute, but there's a house there.
It's a yellow house, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yellow siding house. I know what you're talking about.
Yep, absolutely.
Can't think of it right now either.
The name is eluding me for some reason because I hate talking about myself. But yeah, that it was a great interview. She's really, a great guest. She came out with the book talking about her struggles and how she learned how she was, had all these abilities, and it was actually part of the paranormal group that actually kind of pushed her to kind of explore and broaden her horizons with her powers and her abilities. So it's a really cool episode. Check it out, darkfringeradio.com.
Yes. And by the way, thank you everybody for tuning in. We got Sherilyn Carter saying good evening. Harolyn's in here. Some
Hey,
other people are going
Cheryl.
to be rolling in. People have messaged me all day. They're waiting for our show tonight. So we appreciate
Nice.
everybody. We are streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. Please share this out. Make more comments. Ask questions during the show. We'll highlight them eventually. It might not be right then when you ask, but I will put it to the side. We'll get it to our guest this evening. If you're over on Rumble, please give us a thumbs up, make comments, keeps us in the algorithm and everything. We appreciate everybody tuning in and your support. Also, I'm on a new platform, Restream. We're not doing StreamYard anymore. Some things are coming up in the near future. We're going to be on eTalk TV eventually as a network. We're going back to a network. I can't believe it. I'm nervous.
Hey, we have to.
We've been free for a year, though. We've been free for a year. So, but we're going back to a network. It's going to be a good network, and I'm really excited about that. But what I'm really more excited about is having our guest on tonight.
Absolutely.
And he's a fantastic individual. I've listened to several of his podcasts this week. He's an author and writer. But let me officially introduce him. Walter Bosley is a former U.S. Air Force officer, FBI, counterintelligence specialist, and a seasoned federal agent with more than 20 years of experience in national security and investigations. After his government service, he transitioned into writing, research, and independent investigation with a focus on historical mysteries, occult studies, and hidden histories. Bosley is known for his work for the connections between secret societies, ancient technologies, and esoteric knowledge, often linking these to unexplained events in American and world history. It's phenomenal. He's very good at what he does. He's been featured also in Ancient Aliens. So let's bring Walter Bosley on right now. Hello, Mr. Bosley. Good to have you on the show.
Oh, hey, it's great to be here, Emily and Will. Thank you for having me on. Me and my
pleasure
windblown hair.
Well, I love your black and white. I was like, how can I do that? Because that's different, and people are gonna remember you because the black and white.
Absolutely.
What happened was about 3 months ago or so, we were setting up for an episode, and my white balance and the color was all screwed up. So I just took the saturation out completely and said, I'll do it black. And I'm going, oh, this looks interesting. And so I liked it. So I've kept it, and people have noticed. They're like, oh, that is different. So I've been sticking with it.
Well, I love it. It makes me want to do it. Let's start the Bosley
Let's
train.
start a thing, right?
Be on black and white. Here, we're kind of going back to the 60s a little bit today, too, or maybe before the 60s anyway. So everything black and white. But thank you. If you don't mind, since this is the first time that you're on the show, can you tell a little bit about the people? I introduced you, but can you tell them about some of the books? We're going to be advertising them and putting them up on the screen later, but some of the books you've written and what drew you to this outside the FBI and the government, what made you start studying these topics?
Oh, okay. Well, years ago when I was in high school, I really started taking writing seriously. Seriously. So I fancy myself a writer of fiction, all through college. And then even as my career for Uncle Sam started, I continued writing, mostly screenplays. And, I started a few novels, that kind of thing, wrote, one completely. And so I saw myself as a fiction writer all those years. And by 2002, I was working in a job where I was traveling around the world, which was really cool. And I'm an adventure fan, a classic adventure fan. So I decided, you know what? I want to start a magazine, kind of like Famous Monsters in what's the word? Spirit, but for pulp adventure. And so I thought, okay, great. I'll start this magazine. Well, that quickly became, no, you know what? I'll start a publishing label, and I'll publish classic pulp and new pulp, things like that. So I started that, and I had back in 1981, a really weird experience connected to Disneyland, and it had kept with me. So in 2006, I decided, you know what, I need to really dig into that weird Disneyland experience I had, and the research and investigation into that resulted in it's right here. So I'll show you my first nonfiction book, and by that time, I had been publishing, the fiction, the adventure fiction, some of my own, plus classic stuff, plus a couple other authors. And that Latitude 33, my book about the Disneyland thing, was the first nonfiction book that I had written and published. Well, what happened was the threads that I pulled for Latitude 33 revealed more threads, and I just kept pulling them, and I really jumped into this nonfiction writing thing because of that. And even though my books since let's see, 2008 is when the Disneyland book was published, and my books since then, even though they may seem to be unconnected, actually one book truly did lead to the other. And the next thing I knew, I had written a lot more and published a lot more nonfiction than I had fiction. And I recently, last year when I turned 60, I promised myself, okay, I'm 60, time is getting shorter than it is longer. So I need to show some love to my fiction writing. So I am going to get back into finally getting, the fiction out there. But yeah, it was wondering what the heck had happened to me with this weird experience at Disneyland that led to, I think, 15 or 16 nonfiction books since.
Wow.
Well, I want to know what happened at Disney, and did it deal with Club 33 at Disney?
Yeah.
It dealt with the 33rd north degree of latitude. But it started with Club 33 because I've been friends with Greg Bishop. I don't know if you know him, author of Project Beta and the host of a show called Radio Mysterioso. And we became friends in 2004. And one night on his show, for a while I was kind of the unofficial co-host. And one night in 2006, we asked ourselves, why is Club 33 called Club 33? And there's the corporate answer. But in looking that up while we were on his show on air, we noticed that the coordinates were latitude, 33 degrees latitude, but it was 33.8118 or something like that. And by that time, everybody was kind of onto, the 33rd degree of latitude, and it just kind of jumped out at us. It's like, oh, Disneyland is at the 33rd degree of latitude north, and here's Club 33. What's going on with that? Could there be something going on with that? And we had started talking about Disneyland because of my weird experience that I had, shared with him. So that really, I was off to the races with that. It was okay. I got to find out who Disney hired to build Disneyland. And that's where I learned about a guy named
CIA.
And, and so that's how the book happened. But the experience that I had in 81, I was a senior in high school. And if anybody who's a Southern California native, and particularly around my age or even Gen X, we all remember that if you live in Southern California, Disneyland was a lot more affordable. So it was easy to go whenever you wanted to. Also, you didn't have to have reservations in those days. You could just say, hey, let's go to Disneyland. Number one, you could afford it easily. Number two, you could just go and get in. This reservation thing is weird. And so I remember it was a Wednesday, and we were off school or something because it was a Wednesday in February. So we go to Disneyland, and sometime in the 9 o'clock hour that night, we're on the carousel, and when I go to Disneyland, I ride everything. I don't care. Kiddie rides, whatever, the whole thing. It's all fun. So we're on the carousel going around, and I see this man, this older gentleman who I it's like, oh, okay, he looks like he's about 70, I would say. And he was wearing a black suit, white shirt, no tie. and he had snow white hair that was, probably about my length right now, or a little shorter, and he had a snow white beard. Mine is almost there. Kind of close trim like mine. Isn't this weird? Particularly when you think of doppelgangers, right? But
Mhm.
he was standing there. If you know your geography of Disneyland, he's standing there on that pathway between Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and Dumbo, the ride where the elephants
Mhm.
fly around. And he's just watching the carousel go around, and a few times around, I noticed him for he just stood out to me, and then eventually we went around, he was gone. I'm like, okay. Now at that time, I wasn't as immersed in or as knowledgeable as I became about weird things, but it did stick out to me. So we get off the carousel and we go walking down that path I described, which takes you past the teacups and to where the Matterhorn is. And you're getting a lesson in the Disneyland geography if you've never been there, folks. And there he was sitting on a bench underneath the monorail track. I'm looking in the wrong direction. And I don't know. I just felt compelled to walk up and strike up a conversation and said, "Hey, how you enjoying the park?" And he was just animated. No pun intended, being at Disneyland. He said, "Oh, this is amazing. This is wonderful." And he was wide-eyed, like almost like a child, like he had never seen such an amazing place. So in the conversation, one thing led to another, and uh, he said that he wanted to ride some things, but he didn't have, the tickets for it. All he had left was an A ticket. As we know, in the old days, it was A through E, right? The E tickets were the good rides. The A tickets were the, and he did have a ticket for where he could ride Small World. So we go ride Small World with him. We walk him over there and we get on It's a Small World, and he sits in the front, and he's, it's a small world we all tend to make jokes about, right? The
Right.
plastic ball,
Yeah.
that
Wow.
song where you're like, ugh. And he's just looking at it in wonder, like, oh, this is amazing. And we get off the ride, and we get off the ride, we go back to the area where the bench is, and he says his name is Alfred. Okay. Now here's what's interesting. For the life of me, I cannot remember his voice.
Hmm.
I cannot remember his voice, whether he had an accent or not, but I remembered, his name was Alfred. So I don't know, because I lived in Southern California and went to Disneyland a lot. It was already like, 10 o'clock at night. I gave him my, that was when they first started the unlimited passport tickets. Okay. Now, when you go, as you know, you buy your ticket and you ride everything as often as you want. But back then they still had the ticket books A through E. So you had to have an unlimited passport ticket, it was called. And if you had that, you could, ride whatever you wanted as often as you wanted. So I gave that to him. You would have thought I'd given him a pot of gold. He was so incredibly grateful that I had simply given him this. And I mean, yeah, hey, I come here all the time. And I had two friends with me through all this, witnessing this. And I said, with this ticket, you can ride whatever you want as many times as you want. And you still have over an hour before the park closes. And he was just happy, was all get out. And he walks off back to Fantasyland, it goes around a corner, and we go on our way. And it had stuck with me for years. Wow, what was up with this guy? There was something that I couldn't quite pin, but I knew it was significant. And for years that kind of haunted me. Well, 11 years later, I'm working for the FBI in Manhattan, and on my lunch hour, I go down to this bookstore that was in Columbus Circle. I don't know if it's still there. It's called the Coliseum Bookstore in Manhattan on Broadway there, up in the 50s, the upper 50s, 57. Well, Columbus Circle, I think, is 59th or 60th Street or whatever. And I go into the section that we all love, the paranormal books and things like that. And I see this book titled The Old Straight Track. And it's about ley lines, right?
Okay.
And I'm looking at this book. I'm going, oh, Alfred Watkins. Okay, so I opened the book up, and I think I turned it over, and on the back there was a picture of Alfred Watkins. And I got chills because I'm looking at the face of the man I met at Disneyland in 1981.
See, I was thinking about Alfred Hubbard because he was part of the MK Ultra Johnny Appleseed LSD. So I was looking up what he was looking at. I was looking that up because I did.
That's interesting too. You know,
Yeah, it was Alfred. What was his last name again?
The author of the book was Watkins.
Watkins. Okay.
Yeah. Now here's the weird thing. I swear to this day, I still. You know what? Let me show everybody his picture. I've got.
Well, I think I pulled him up, or you can pull him up, or you can show it to us.
Small, but
there he is.
Yeah, that's the picture I pulled up. Yeah,
that's Alfred Watkins, and folks, that's the man
I encountered at Disneyland in 1981. The problem is, Alfred Watkins died in 1935.
Wow.
See, the Alfred Hubbard that I know died in 1982.
Oh, 1982 is the year that they redesigned Fantasyland and moved the carousel. And that becomes important later in the story.
Let me see if I can find Alfred. I doubt it's him, but I was thinking Alfred. Look at me. I'm here on Hubbard, Matthew Hubbard, LSD. I've done research on him before. I mean, that's what he would look like a little bit older. I don't know if you have a beard or not, if he saw you.
Nope, didn't look like him.
Didn't look like him. Okay, that's like who I was going to. I was like, dude, it could have been him. I don't know where he lived,
That's
though.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That guy's more like my features, where I mean, it's my hair goes light, my eyebrows are still going to be dark. So I'm looking at this in 1992, and I'm just stunned. Like, and he said his name was Alfred, and I didn't know what, I'm wondering, okay, what the heck? So then 14 years pass, and Greg Bishop and I, we pulled this weird thread. I start digging into it, and I find out that the man who the Disney's hired to be the lead engineer in building Disneyland, his name was C.V. Wood. And he worked for SRI, the legendary Stanford Research Institute.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So he was so enamored with the idea that Walt brought to SRI that he left SRI, went to work for the Disneys, as I said, and he was the man behind the physical engineering of Disneyland. So he's the man that would have laid things out and placed the carousel where it was. Now, why is this important? Well, because as another associate of mine, a man named Sesh Hari, author of an amazing book titled The Handprint of Atlas, Sesh Hari had done some telluric current ley line analysis for me of Southern California, specifically Disneyland. And what he found was the intersection of 3 telluric current lines in Disneyland. And where that intersection is located, we subsequently learned and figured out that was the original position of the carousel before they moved it in 1982. So the carousel was sitting right atop the intersection of 3 telluric currents, spinning every day for several hours.
It's a portal, yeah.
Well, yeah, draw up the energy, distribute it out through the park, right? And Wood was the kind of guy that would have known this kind of stuff, because when you look into him, he was friends with famous psychics and a guy named Tom Swift, who was a philanthropist who was a billionaire, I think, maybe. And he was well known for also going on a hunt for the abominable snowman, the Yeti. And so he was interested in this stuff. So here you have a guy that's interested. And Wood, with Swift and others, was a co-founder of something called the Mind Science Foundation. So here you have a guy deeply interested in psychic things and esoteric stuff. And he's the engineer of Disneyland. And he's the one responsible for putting the carousel on top of an intersection of 3 telluric currents. Now, here's the other interesting thing. I find out, this is in 2006, I find out that C.V. Wood died in 1992, the same year I first learned about the Watkins book. So there's some synchronicity for you. And that blew my mind. And, all the threads I pulled after that, again, resulted in the book, Latitude 33, Key to the Kingdom.
Mm-mm. Wow.
And in the book, present possibilities as to who I think this Alfred was and what, could have happened. So,
wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, going back now, looking at that whole experience that you had, Walter, and then, finding out what you found out.
mm-hmm.
Do you think it was on purpose that it was you that found out this information?
I like to shy away from, it was me, I'm so important. I really do like it because we have way too much of that in this community.
You're right.
That self-importance. It just happens to be that I'm a guy who had one of this particular experience that I had, and I'm a guy who just pulled the threads and wrote about it. I'm curious about how many other people have had really strange experiences at Disneyland as well, but it's kind of, that's a very interesting question, because you could see I'm like, where do I go with that?
Yeah, the question is like, why me, right? Why me? Why?
Sometimes exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, the for instance, the intersection of the ley lines. Well, after this book, I talked with my friend Seshari, and I said, okay, those lines are coming in from somewhere. Let's see where they go throughout Southern California. And oh boy, it just got more wild from there, led to this other trilogy of books that I wrote. And like I said, each one of my books has led to the other. And one of these ley lines that intersects at Disneyland connects to a huge spiral of this energy that emanates from San Diego. And when you're down in San Diego, that huge spiral line, it runs through the hospital where I was born. It runs through the spot, the area where my parents lived at the time I was born. It runs through where the dormitory I lived and the apartment I lived in San Diego while going to college are. So that line runs through these significant places in my life, and then of course goes into Disneyland. So, I like to think that there's a bunch of other people, obviously, who it runs through their lives, and they've had similar weird experience. Yeah. I could go on.
I want to tell you, I think the name Alfred, though, is really associated with Walt Disney, too, because I'm just looking this up real quick. Alfred Molina was the first gentleman of Walt Disney Animation Studios.
Wait a minute.
Alfred and Elma. Not Molina. I'm sorry. Mila. It's Milotte.
Milott.
Yeah.
Also, they worked with Alfred Hitchcock.
Yep.
Alfred Hitchcock was good friends with Walt Disney. We have Alfred Molina here, British actor for Frozen 2 and stuff. But
everybody knows Alfred Molina.
Yeah.
He was in Raiders of the Lost Ark and so much stuff.
There's a lot of connection with the name Alfred with Disney.
Yeah.
That's a rabbit hole.
And thank you. Yeah, that's this whole thing is a rabbit hole. And isn't it funny that oh boy, you see when you start talking about this, how did I describe where I first saw him? He's standing in that path between Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and Dumbo, and he went down that path towards the Matterhorn, obviously, because we followed that path, and that's where we found him. Now, guess where he was sitting? He was sitting catty corner to the Alice in Wonderland ride.
It's interesting.
The most famous going down the rabbit hole story ever.
Right. And then you're talking about the magic toad, which could be kind of, insinuated that maybe you're starting on an LSD journey and you're going to go fly on Dumbo. And then here you go. You're on a different trip.
It makes you wonder if C.V. Wood, which I haven't found any connection yet, but might he have had connections to MK Ultra?
Or Masonic maybe as well, too.
Well, what's possibly, I'm glad you brought up the Masonic, because I looked into this, and I have not been active in decades, but I'm a Freemason, once a Mason, always a Mason, as far as, you've gone through it. I joined a lodge at the instruction of my mentor back in 92, when I lived on Long Island. I was raised, as they call it, to the third degree in the West Babylon Lodge on Long Island, but military service took me away, and I never got involved with it again. But being a Mason, I know how to look into these things. And there's this story that, oh, Walt Disney was a Mason. No, he was not. He was in high school. He was in DeMolay. There's been a lot of young men who in high school are active in DeMolay, never become Masons. It was a high school organization. I looked into this. Walt Disney was never a Freemason. The way I look at how Disneyland was engineered with this stuff is it was not for nefarious purposes at all. It was to enhance the experience of the park. It wasn't any kind of dark satanic ritual. But you know what? That's a good question. I don't recall finding where Wood was a Mason, but if I were to find that out, it wouldn't surprise me because, people with these interests, a lot of them tend to become involved with Masonry. So
this might be a dumb question. I don't know. I don't know the connections here, but was Walt Disney a Shriner? Do you have to be a Mason to be a Shriner?
Shriners are generally Masons. Yeah.
Okay. I know they do a lot with Shriners hospitals and stuff like that. So I just didn't know if
he was, he socialized with, a lot of Masons. Of course, you do certain things, and particularly during an era when just about, so many men were. And
right.
Look, there's an aspect in the first 3 degrees of Masonry where the great majority of it is a bunch of guys who get together to, have some laughs and a few drinks, and they help their communities and they network, professionally, and they're not involved in any hocus pocus stuff beyond the rituals. And most of them, if there's some occultic meaning, they couldn't tell you what it is. So, they're always, they're involved with philanthropic things, and they're always, recognizing the work of this person and that person. So yeah, Disney certainly socialized with these guys and probably was recognized by them on more than one occasion, but he himself wasn't a Mason.
Yeah, I think he was more of an occultist than he was a Mason.
That could be true.
Walt Disney? No,
you don't think so?
No, that's part of that's the thing that I try to tell people, and they don't want to hear it.
No, I'm open to hear. Yeah.
Walt Disney was a much simpler man than some people want to recognize. He really was.
Gotcha.
Now, he was very good friends with Walter Knott, the man who founded Knott's Berry Farm. Mm-hmm. And Walter Knott was a guy who was very interested in the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And he's the one who built and owned what's called Calico Ghost Town out here. For the years, it was owned by Knott's. It was a Knott's Berry Farm affiliated thing. Now it's a state park. But here's the interesting thing about Calico Ghost Town. What Walter Knott did, when you go to Calico Ghost Town, which is not far from where I live, all the buildings, the old authentic Western buildings from the 1880s, those were imported. You're going to love this. They were all bought from Tombstone, Arizona, taken apart, numbered, and reassembled at Calico Ghost Town. These were the buildings that were present during the gunfight of the OK Corral in the era of the Earps. And when you go to Calico Ghost Town, those buildings were there when that happened. When you go to Tombstone, there's only like a few buildings that are actually, were authentically there in 1880s. So that's interesting. And I've spoken with folks about Calico, and there's a lot of paranormal activity there. The state park rangers will not discuss it. They don't want to hear it. They won't discuss it. But there's a tribal organization right next door, and they'll talk about it with you all day long. So Walter Knott was a guy who was really interested in that stuff. Walt's extent of interest was, oh, hey, let's put this spooky ride and we'll call it the Haunted Mansion. That was Walt Disney was really a simple guy who liked to chain smoke. He liked his whiskey, and he cussed a lot. He talked like a sailor, they say, but he really was a much simpler, well-meaning guy than his reputation lately with all the hoo-ha that, and I recognize even in the book, I talk about The Disney Corporation since like the 80s is this different thing than Walt's era, and it's not necessarily good. I mean, there's when you really look at it, I talk about this in the book also. When you really look at it, all the nefarious things you can point to about Disney or Disneyland or whatever, these all started years after Walt died.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is there. I hear you when we're talking about Disney and the creepy things, but this is not Walt himself, and this didn't start until years after he died. So for what it's worth, that's what I found in the actual research.
Well, that's good. That's good to know.
Well, let's move to JFK, can we?
Sure.
Is that good to move now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move over to JFK because we're coming up on the anniversary of his assassination on 11/22/1963, which numbers do play a role in this. And I'm going to tell you this, Walter. My birthday is March the 13th, 313.
Okay.
I see it everywhere. That's the frame that he was assassinated in.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was not alive during the time this happened. My mom was, and it's something that she will always remember where she was at over this. And we're coming up on the anniversary. So with your experience in the FBI and other government agencies and things, can you tell us a brief opinion, possibly? What do you think JFK is possibly connected to some things that might be happening now as well, with what's going on in society? Because I feel like some characters are coming up to play in what we're seeing.
If anything, I think that he space program related stuff. Absolutely. You're familiar with Daniel List, dark journalist?
I've heard of him.
Oh,
I'm not familiar, but I've heard of him. So
go check him out. He's going to be on tonight. In fact, when we're done at 5 p.m. I don't know if you're done, but when my hour's up at 5 p.m. Pacific time, he's doing an interesting, he'll be doing a live, but go check him out at YouTube. But he's someone I've known been acquainted with for years. I've been on his show and stuff. And he's really done a deep dive on JFK and the assassination. And he has presented that a lot of this mystery around JFK and particularly assassination has to do with what he was going to reveal about space and the motives behind going to the moon and things like that. And I think that there's certainly some relevance to ever since, what's gone on in space with the U.S. space program and stuff, that yeah, he was going to reveal some things that might be, revealed now. I think that also the political resonance has to do with, I did some research a few years back that I found so depressing that I set it aside. It was so disturbing to me. And I finally had to follow through with it. And, to plug another book, I wrote this book, NIMSA, How America Sold Its Soul. And basically, in a nutshell, I'm in that school of thought that, from my perspective, after jumping into this, Operation Paperclip was a Trojan horse operation by the Nazis. And it was their idea. A lot of people don't know this, but Operation Paperclip, the idea was given to the U.S. by German scientists of the Luftwaffe. They said, hey, I can get a bunch of my friends, and if you bring us into your country, we'll work for you. We'll work for the United States. Now, a lot of people think that Operation Paperclip was driven by the bomb. No, it was not. It was driven by aerospace medicine specialists. Aerospace medicine. Gee, sounds boring, sounds mundane, sounds dry. But what is aerospace medicine but the science and technology of keeping human beings alive in space? Dating back to the 1920s, all these guys who started aerospace medicine, their goal was to put man in space. Okay? And the German guys were among the first experts, but there were also Americans. One of them was a guy named Colonel Harry Armstrong. Okay. And he knew these guys dating back to the 20s because all the guys in aviation knew each other before the war started. Right. Well, they come to Armstrong with the idea, hey, bring us into your country and so forth. So Armstrong sees the validity in that, but the whole thing was being driven, honestly, by wanting to put man in space. Now people say, well, no, that was how we got high altitude aircraft and keeping, life support systems, pilots and crews alive in high altitude. No, that was a side product. That was always a side product that was on the way to trying to put man in space. So filled with these ideas and the excitement of that during the World War II era and getting close to the end of World War II, they said, yeah, we'll go for that. And hundreds of these guys, as we know, were brought into America during Operation Paperclip. Well, what I learned through historical research was that dating back to the medieval era, the German, or specifically the Prussian Junkers class, they did this same thing. They ingratiated themselves with the Teutonic Knights. Okay, they said, hey, we'll be your friends, we'll be your support, we'll support your estates, we'll provide you with your armor, your your equestrian needs, and we'll do everything to support you and your big estates and everything. And the knights were like, oh, okay, great. So they ingratiated themselves with the Teutonic Knights. They even started marrying into their families, and they raised their station and their influence to the point where they eventually betrayed the Teutonic Knights for greater power. The Prussian Junkers, these guys, they were responsible for the fall and destruction of the Teutonic Knights, who they had initially befriended. Well, they go on, and this is their pattern. From the medieval era on up to the modern times, they befriend those who they want to destroy and control. They befriend them, they build up their power and influence, and then they start behind their back, with duplicity, they start befriending that host's enemy. And then they help destroy their host and move to their host enemy, and that becomes the new host. And they keep doing it, to where they finally control all of what we call Germany today. And they were behind the movement of a unified Germany. So once they got a unified Germany, they then kept doing this with other countries around, and you get the idea, until the point where they had all this power and influence. Okay. And they did this leading into World War II. Now, this class that I'm talking about, this group, they were the ones, and this is what I put in my book, they were the ones behind the rise of the Nazi power. Okay.
Are we talking with this stuff and my research on my end and stuff? Are we talking like, is this more than human? Is this supernatural?
No.
Like, are we talking about Tartarian Empire a little bit? I mean, that's way back. That's 1800.
No, not yet. But
that's
an interesting thing. So they were behind the rise of the Nazi Party. Okay. And they used the Nazi Party to advance their own technology and their own wealth and their own power. Okay. And then when it was obvious that the Nazis were, going to fall and that Germany was going to lose the war, they decided they needed a new host. And that new host is the United States. So they come into the United States at the end of the war. And when you look at what happened to the United States after World War II, the rise of our military industrial complex, okay, this is a Prussian model, a military industrial complex from medieval times on up to now. This is something that they did throughout history in their host nations. Okay, they come in to help. Oh, we're your friends, United States. We're going to help you with your defense and your industry. The military-industrial complex is established. I mean, Eisenhower was just getting out of office, and he warned us about them. Right? He saw there was a problem here. Well, then we get into the JFK era. JFK is doing things to resist the desires of this group. That's really this German group that's really behind our military industrial complex. And by this time, they're also starting to get influence on our politicians, congressmen and such like that. Well, JFK had to go. In their opinion, JFK had to go because
he warned us too. He warned everybody.
Yeah, he did. He did. Now, a public violent assassination, even like what happened to JFK, this was something that this Prussian Junkers mystery group would do in medieval times. Some unknown assassin would kill an opponent in a public place very violently to send a message to the others and the public that you don't know exactly who we are, but we can get you at any time. And the JFK assassination fits that model to a T. Remember, he was going to get us out of Vietnam. No, a military-industrial complex needs constant war. Okay. He was going to share our moon landing with the Russians, the Soviets. No, they hated the Soviets. So, they wanted to control the space technology. So there was no sharing it with anyone else. JFK had to go. Joseph Farrell has analyzed, if you're familiar with him, all the possible suspects in the JFK assassination, they all had one connection in common, all of them, be it mafia, Cubans, whoever. And guess who it was?
George Bush?
No, the post-war Nazis.
Well, here's the thing. People don't understand that George Bush and his family also funded Auschwitz over in Germany with the European banks and the royals. I feel like all roads lead to Russia. And then my dad's a Vietnam veteran. He's a screaming eagle, 101st. Here's his picture. I put him up all the time.
Well,
and
you know what? He might have known my uncle.
Well, I want to tell you this. With him, he's had a lot of PTSD since Biden got in office because of the pullout of Afghanistan. It looked a lot similar to Vietnam, and we have the rise of LBJ. So, are we going into another wheel? Is history going to be repeating itself? Like, I just feel like there's a lot of connections coming up, and even Joe Biden referenced LBJ on the White House Facebook page a couple times.
I just want to my eye caught something, and I want to address Foot Clan. If you want to know what this guy is talking about, I can refer you to some sources you're clearly not familiar with. And I'm not trying to lead anyone away from. I'm not trying to lead anyone away from the Zapruder film at all. I don't know where he made that connection, but I'm not trying to walk on anybody's favorite little theory.
No, I want to learn more. So that's the thing here. So tell me something.
And some people do need to learn more, but
are you saying I need to?
Not you.
Whatever you're saying, and I know it's okay.
Sorry, if my eye catches snark, I rarely let that pass.
It's okay. I want to learn more. So I will be at 90 years old and be a learner. So tell me where I need to go.
Start with there's check out Daniel List and Dark Journalist. Look at his reports. Look at Joseph Farrell's work.
Okay.
By the way, Daniel List does excellent discussion about the Zapruder film as well.
Okay.
Now, I don't agree with. I know Jay Weidner. I don't agree with some of his wilder conclusions about the Zapruder film.
Mm-hmm.
But the Zapruder film. I'm in the school of thought that it was a plant, and there's goofy things going on with it. But check out. You could start with Daniel List. Go to Joseph Farrell. Check out Jay Weidner's work, definitely.
Okay.
Because, he looks at it, very much more, deeply than I have. But I'm talking about the who behind, no matter where the shooter was sitting or standing or, the driver did this or the hoo-ha did that. I step back and I look at big picture. Okay. I want to know, okay, who was the one who ordered, the shooting? And it's looking very much like this group that anybody foolish enough to work for the government is a liar and a tool of the criminals.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm not looking. This is Foot Clan. Foot Clan, what are you doing, buddy? I'm a student. Foot Clan, not everybody is like that. We got good folks.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let that.
No, that's okay. It's all right. It's okay. Foot Clan, I'll be messaging you, buddy. He's good. He's a good guy. He's just.
Anyway, go ahead. You asked me something.
Oh, I'm not putting that up there.
Well, you know what? Foot Clan said something that I like, but when you bring the Jesuits into it, he's damn right about that.
Well, okay. Well, that's what I want to say. It was more than the CIA. It felt like it was it was international thing to take down JFK.
Oh, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, all these groups had their bloody fingers in it. But going back to what you said about the Bushes, yeah, remember Prescott Bush was indicted during the war for giving banking services to the Nazis.
Well, it goes all the way back to Samuel Bush. It goes all the way back Columbus, Ohio. I have done a lot. And Columbus, Ohio is 2 hours from me. I've done a lot of research on this. It's always all roads, in my opinion, in modern day from 1930 up to now, in a lot of ways, lead to the Bushes. I think the Bushes are the most corrupt presidential family that we've had, period. And they're Republican. I don't care what side you're on. They're corrupt.
And that's saying something, because there's been several corrupt families.
Yeah, there's a lot. Right? I think it's the Bush. I think the Bushes are the most evil, corrupt family, in my opinion. And let me tell you, my dog, his name's Jeb. It's after Jeb Bush. I had a great awakening in 2020. So it's hard for me to say this, but it is. I think all roads lead to them. The CIA, which he was over the CIA, I think they colluded with other countries to do what they needed to do for JFK.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can disagree, Walter. It's okay.
No. I agree with you about
Will, you can disagree too. I don't care.
I am no fan of the Bushes.
Okay.
I am no fan of the Republican establishment. I despise the neocons as much as I despise the radical left.
There's always radicals on both sides.
Exactly. Radical left, radical right.
What's the difference between a radical? Just because your opinion, it's really the difference, right? At the end of the day, yeah. There's radicals on both sides, just like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's the point. Yeah.
The problem with the radicals is the lengths, the extent to which they're willing to go to enforce their view on the world. So,
So, I'm sorry, Will. I've talked a lot. I want you to ask some questions here real quick. We got about 10 minutes left. I want you to ask some questions.
No, one question I really wanted to ask is the numerology, aspect behind, this assassination. This happening on a kind of a master number, the 11th month of the year. Do you think that there is some type of connection with that? We've seen.
Yeah, are you familiar with the legendary, infamous, whatever you want to call it, well-known, we'll say, essay King Kill 33 by Shelby Downer?
Yes.
And oh shoot, Mike, what's his name?
I forget his last name.
I'm not familiar with this. Say it again.
Oh, King Kill 33. Look it
King
up.
Kill 33. I'm learning all kinds
love
of
it. It goes into all sorts of symbolism, occult symbolism associated with the JFK assassination, Lee Harvey Oswald, all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Do you think that was put there on purpose to throw us off, the trail of what was going on, or do you think that was just that they did that on purpose, or was it intentional?
Did what on purpose?
Well, these numbers, how they kind of, repeat itself.
No, I think there's intended. Part of it is revelation of method.
Right.
Part of it is, the magic that they're doing. Part of it isn't the intended impact that it is intended to have upon the public, its psyche. I mean, look at the impact that had on adults. I was a little baby. I was born a month and 20 days before that happened. But I mean, the impact it had on my parents' generation is like 9/11 on a lot of us. For years, certain things about 9/11 would just, trigger an emotional reaction, in me. And that was what led me to really look deeper at that. And, people say, speaking of the Bushes, people say, the Bushes did 9/11. No. Somebody behind the scenes did 9/11, but W allowed it to happen, right? We know that there had to have been people in the national security structure who gave information and turned their head and made sure certain things were out of the way so that this could be done. But it was an act of black magic upon the psyche of primarily the American public. Ever since then, look at the political and psycho-emotional chaos this country's been in. And that was one of its intended purposes.
The PSYOP.
Yeah. You know,
I'm throwing a comment up here.
The big ass psyop.
I'm throwing a comment back up here.
the Jesuits? Yeah.
Behind 9/11. The dancing Jews, I hate to say it. We're going to get flagged, obviously.
No, not even this group I'm talking about. I refer to them as NIMSA, which is a term that comes from Charles Delshell's work.
Okay.
But I refer to them as NIMSA. This NIMSA group, they were the ones behind the Nazis. They were the ones behind Operation Paperclip, and I think they were the ones behind 9/11. And
so is this how about modern? Would we call these people like the? Well, I wouldn't say the deep state because I feel like the deep state's more locally, but
deep state is a product of them.
Okay,
deep state is a product of
the Mossad.
The Mossad is just a product. I don't. I'm one of those. I don't revere. I'm not anti, but I don't revere Israel like a lot of conservative Americans do. That comes from having been a counterintelligence agent, and they are high on the list of people who steal our technology and sell it to our enemies. They are self-serving. And I'm not anti-Israel. They have every right to exist, but I don't look at them as God's chosen people, and I'm supposed to bow down and revere them. They're just another country out to survive, and they do some shitty things. Oh, sorry. They do some crappy things. You know, that and the Mossad is very good, they're very powerful, but they're not the end all be all. You know, they are another product and result. Oh, hey, if you want to know something about Israel, you want to get educated, look for the book Perfidy by Ben Hecht, Hecht. You need to read that book. That'll enlighten you about Israel and Zionism. And lest anyone get any ideas, I'm no I don't have, you know, the Palestinians, they do nasty, awful things too. It's two sides fighting each other, being bullies to each other. And I don't know why the whole world has to be dragged into it.
That's true. Absolutely. Yep.
That's how they make money. Yeah. Will, go ahead. I'll have you ask a question. I have one last question too I want to ask. Will, I feel like I've talked a lot. I always want to make sure Will gets in.
No, I appreciate it. No, and Walter, I really appreciate you coming on tonight and really kind of enlightening us on a lot of these things.
I've been running my mouth, you know.
No. But another thing I wanted to ask is, you know, going back to this group that is responsible for all this, how far does this group go? I mean, you're saying that this goes all the way back to medieval times, right? Or this idea, right?
This particular Prussian/German little private culture, you might say, and their influential group, powerful group. They go back to the medieval era. Read a book called, here's another one, The 1,000-Year Conspiracy by Paul Winkler. Now, if you read my book, NIMSA, How America Sold Its Soul, I talk about the salient points of these books. And when you showed my stuff on screen, it was one of the books available at my website, NIMSA, How America Sold Its Soul. I talk about the Winkler book. I allude to some things in the Hecht book. Those two books will really enlighten you on who I'm and what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Well, it just reminds me of something that's always been here. And when I booked you for the tonight, I was like, I had the perfect song for you. Because I love music. I'm Pisces, folks. I love music. But Rolling Stones, The Symphony of the Devil, or For the Devil.
Oh boy!
Like it tells us, Rolling Stones. I have a whole other opinion about this music over the last 6, 7, 8 years, and learning this stuff and trying to read.
Sure.
These people, in my opinion, have always been here. They have always plotted, have always planned, and they want total world dominance.
Sure.
And we're the peons of it, and they will execute anything and everything. So real quick, we talk about predictive programming on this show, and I know I want to say real quick, I don't want to keep you, but Ingersoll Lockwood, I have this book. I've read. If you know me, I can only read so much at a time because I have a kid. I'm busy, but I'm up to here, halfway through it, and there's some things in here that people take literally that I don't think is so literal.
Exactly.
And I think this is almost predictive programming in many ways in book form because they didn't really have TV like they used to. And I think that there's a game being played off this book now that we're seeing play out in reality. What's your
Very, very
opinions?
possible.
And you've written books researching these
Yeah.
books, Ingersoll Lockwood. The last, for people here, the last president talks about Barron Trump, Don, and all that kind of stuff in here. Don Trump. Can you tell us a little bit about your research on this and things?
I co-wrote a book with a young guy named Todd Wood, The Mystery of Ingersoll Lockwood, and we looked into it from the perspective of how could Lockwood have known certain things that were very, like you said, predictive of something that would come along, over 100 years later. Now, you can only do so much with predictive programming. You can do a lot with predictive programming, but when you're talking about a span of 100 years, okay, Lockwood was dead long before, Donald Trump emerged on the political scene, I believe before he was born, even. So we look at it from the perspective of how could Lockwood have, isn't it weird that he named this little boy character Barron Trump, which is Barron with one R, like a title. Right. And then Donald Trump, a century later, he has this son he names his son Barron. Now, what I suggested in that book, Todd and I, was that maybe Donald Trump had the Ingersoll Lockwood books around the family house, estate or whatever, when he was a kid in the family library. And that's where he got the idea to name his son Barron Trump. Okay, that's fair. That's very possible. But how is it that this son that he had looks virtually identical in 2016, looked virtually identical to an illustration done of the little Barron Trump character done over 100 years before Barron Trump was born? That's the weird esoteric part. So we actually looked at it from the perspective of, did Lockwood or did the illustrator of the Barron Trump book somehow, through remote viewing or divination,
or Looking Glass? Is it a Project Looking Glass?
Something akin to a Project Looking Glass? Yeah. And that's what, we explore in that book. Because it's just too weird. And then talk about a rabbit hole. You get into a guy named Charles Howard Johnson, and we present the mystery of Charles Howard Johnson. And I talk about him in two books, the Ingersoll Lockwood book and this time travel guidebook that I have. Charles Howard Johnson's quite a mystery. And it gets weird. Now, you say, well, this is all fantasy. This is all too weird. It can't be real. But remember, the 1890s, we have every reason to believe that there were some pretty astounding scientific and technological breakthroughs made in the 1890s that were certainly pushed underground to be developed in secret through the following century. So, yeah, talk about a Project Looking Glass kind of technology. Might somebody have tapped into that in the 1890s? We say they might have. So it's all very weird.
Well, and you got John Trump, working for MIT and friends with Tesla, and the missing boxes of Tesla. Like, it's all super weird. That's it. It's weird. That's the term that we're going to use tonight.
When Donald Trump ran in 2016, I had told Joseph Farrell and a couple of friends, I said, every presidential candidate has some power behind him, right? Yeah. Some powerful group. And I thought back then that the group that was behind Trump back in 2016 might be this group that maybe formed in the 1890s. And, they were behind, John Trump being, what he was. And that's how Donald got exposed to these guys and their power and their ideas. And maybe they were kind of tired of what the Republican Democrats, the Bush, the Clintons, and the whoever that, they finally said, okay, we need to put our hand in this and push a different guy. And, as we know, unfortunately, in the first term, he trusted deep state people. He trusted people he shouldn't have. And
even now, though, there's some people around him that I question. Because
I'll be honest with you. I've had trouble with his selection of JD Vance.
Same. Hallelujah. He's LBJ. I think he's LBJ.
I think, yeah, he came on board so that Donald Trump could win a certain demographic of the electorate. And I have never trusted J.D. Vance.
He's
I do
connected
not
to Thiel.
appreciate his involvement. And look, folks, I am not a Democrat. I'm right of center. And this Project 2025 stuff, there is some bothersome ideas in it. And Vance was part of that.
Vance goes a lot deeper with New York Times, working for Obama's attorney. There's a lot. His wife's on the Gates Foundation, Cambridge. Like, I've done the deep dive.
Maybe it's another Trojan attack. Maybe it's another Trojan attack.
It is. I mean, we went from Pence, PE, to VA, Vance. It only first two letters changed. There's some algorithm in this.
Good eye, yeah,
and stuff. There's something going to happen.
Yeah, it's
going to happen, folks.
Anybody, look, any American who's truly for individual liberty needs to be concerned about J.D. Vance.
Yes,
because you know what? Whatever your morality is, whatever your spiritual morality is, the minute you start thinking that your personal spiritual morality code is what everybody else should follow, that, in my book, as an American, is when you become a problem.
Well,
we've had 47 presidents, or however many, because a couple of guys did it twice, Trump and Cleveland. I'll say this, from what I've seen and from what I've observed and found, out of all those presidents, only two have not had. And I'm not anti-church. I believe in God and all that.
Right.
I'm not anti-God and all that. I have a problem with churches. Only two did not have a church affiliation. Do you know who they were? Lincoln's one of them.
And
Thomas Jefferson is the other.
Okay.
Now, Lincoln and Jefferson are clearly the example of the two, greatest presidents. Because look what Jefferson, he put into words the American ideal. Okay, he understood the concepts. He believed in God. He just had
I have nothing to do with the church. I went to
he
Bible
understood
college, folks.
what
I have
church
nothing to
is
do
all
with
about. Abraham Lincoln also understood what churches are all about. And that's kind of the perspective I have. I believe in God, right here. I do. But I have a problem with churchianity. And Vance, I just tell everybody, be careful with Vance.
I'm going to make one last comment, and then I want you to tell everybody where to find your books. They're going to listen by podcast, but real quick, I just want to say Vance wrote for New York Times. He wrote many articles for New York Times. The very first article that came out after Vance was announced as vice president, like within 2 hours, first article came out saying that he's going to be the successor of Trump. Already saying he's going to follow Trump. I was like, why are they pushing this out so fast? And he's a green politician, and he spoke badly about Trump for a long time until he got Thiel money, and then he got Thiel money, and then he was still not winning, so he changed his mind on Trump, and he got in there. He creeps me out. Me out.
Thank you.
A lot of people creep me out though too. I'm hoping I'm wrong.
Something about him, I just haven't trusted him.
That's scary.
We'll see what happens. We're gonna see what happens. I for a long time I thought something was gonna happen to Kamala too. Like, I thought they were gonna take both people out before an election. I did. I thought they already cooed Biden, and then I thought they were gonna take Kamala and Trump, and we're not gonna have an election on the 5th. I really did. So I don't know, something's gonna happen. But sorry, I didn't mean to get that political. I'm passionate about it. I know you are too.
That's perfectly okay. I think we went to the extent that there's certain things sometimes you just gotta express to warn people.
Well, LBJ has been talked a lot. We've had the DNC in Chicago before Robert Kennedy. Like, history is repeating itself, folks.
Sure.
Even Joe Biden's talked about it, and what they did to Joe Biden's wrong. I feel bad for the guy, but I love Spicy Joe. I call him Spicy Joe now. I love him. I love that side of him. But real quick, Walter, if you don't mind, before we let you go and we'll close out the show, can you tell everybody where they can find you on your website via podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is walterbosley.com, like it says where my name is. That's where you can get all my books. And I recommend Secret Missions 5 Veiled Destinies to Foot Clan because he'll love the 90 pages I spend involving the nefarious acts of the Jesuits in the Americas. He'll appreciate that. We agree there on those guys. But walterbosley.com is where all the books I've talked about you can find. And the Walter Bosley channel at YouTube is where I do my live stream.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you so much for coming on the show. You're definitely going to have to come back on in the future.
I'd love to. And this is fun.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you so much. We'll let you go.
Thank
you, Walter. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go. Walter Bosley. Sorry, we got a little political there. I don't like doing that on What the Frick Live. I'm so sorry. But did we really?
Oh, you're talking about a president getting assassinated. You know, it's kind of hard not to.
I mean, I think history is repeating itself. I was wanting to see if there was numbers with July 13th. So what? Because we got 313. I wanted to talk about that too because of what happened, but we just didn't get there. Hour goes by so fast.
Too fast.
But thank you everybody for tuning in. We really truly appreciate you. Please share the show out. It helps our show, helps our guests, everything. We're going to be live again next week here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have Robert Sullivan back on. We're going to be talking about unveiling cinema, some symbolism, and numerical manipulation. Maybe he'll be able to tell us a lot more about JFK.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that we were talking about tonight kind of reminded me about when we had a discussion with Robert.
So. Yeah, so I line these two up back to back to hopefully. So maybe we'll learn a lot more next week too with that. But we'll have Walter Bosley back on. Thank you everybody for tuning in. If you're on Rumble, please give us a thumbs up, comment. Also subscribe. We're gonna have subscriber content only in the near future. We may be doing 2 shows live, 2 shows subscribers only each month in the future. So thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time, next Friday at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Y'all have a wonderful, awesome weekend. Thank you.